It's time to accelerate. Hi, I'm your host, Andy Paul. Join me as I host conversations with the leading experts in sales, marketing, sales automation, sales process, leadership, management, training, coaching, any resource that I believe to help you accelerate the growth of your sales, your business, and most importantly, you. Hi, welcome to the show. My guest today is Dan Waldschmidt, CEO, speaker, author, ultramarathoner, champion ultramarathoner, which I want to get into a little bit later in the show. Dan, how you doing?
Hey, I'm doing great. Great to be with you today.
So rather than have me do the standard introduction, introduce yourself. Tell us what you do and who you do it for.
I like I like now being able to add that champion ultra run. That makes, you know what I mean?
Very impressive, by the way.
It's not just cool, it's like super cool.
Just for people listening, Dan just recently won a 100-mile ultramarathon race, and I think you set a record, didn't you?
I did, yes.
Tell us about that. Where was that?
Yeah, 17 hours, 18 minutes, 5 seconds. I wouldn't even have run the race except it was in my hometown here in the Southeast in South Carolina. And I thought, you know what? It's close to home, so let's go out and do it. And it was a lot of what I was planning for and a lot of what I wasn't planning for. 92 degrees, 100% humidity. I think out of 150 people who started the race, maybe a third or to half had to drop out from some sort of heat stroke or heat exhaustion.
Oh, I can imagine.
But what was cool about that and the races, and my video team created a documentary, which I'll hopefully have done in the next few weeks, was I told my wife the night before, okay, I know I can do this. I just want to see if I can run from wire to wire. And so that was my goal. I've run hundreds before where when you're running up a mountain, you might hike it or power hike it.
Right.
And I said, I don't want to do that. I want to see if I can push myself to run every step of the way. And besides stopping at an aid station to like grab a sandwich where you have to take a step, we ran the entire way and finished 24 miles ahead of second place. And I think something like 10 or 12 hours ahead of second place. So
wow.
that was fun. It was fun.
All right. So we're going to get back to that. But tell us, what do you do and who you do it for in your business?
So here's what I do. I run a big consulting company that solves complex problems for big billion-dollar businesses. We're headquartered out of Washington, D.C. We do work in Istanbul, another office in Istanbul, Turkey, and another office in Tokyo. I think 12 or 14 different countries around the world. We have projects from helping laptop manufacturers, sell the right products in Chile and South America to helping Oracle in Brazil and a bunch of stuff like that. So it's really the problems we solve might be leadership problems. They might be marketing problems. They might be HR problems. They all come down to one really serious thing. And Andy, you know this. Most companies don't really want to solve their problems until it impacts revenue or profit. And as soon as it touches revenue, it's like, we got to solve this. And then they call me and we go in and try to shake things up. But essentially, as you just said in your gracious announcement or introduction, consult to solve problems, speak, and of course, have a book and a blog and things like that. Just trying to change the conversation in business around what it takes to achieve success. And I think a lot of these businesses are stuck and people are stuck, and being stuck is really frustrated. And so I unstick them.
Yeah, I mean, I love the way you write about winning attitudes. Just if you go to your blog just this week. So if people are interested, go to Dan's blog at danwaldschmidt.com/blog. I mean, this week you've got one on stop whining, self-defeat, never give up, taking stock from failures. I mean, how did you learn these lessons?
Well, I had made a bunch of money at a very early age from hard work. And that's kind of how I was raised. No TV in the home at all. Mm-hmm. Seriously. I tell people, kind of like the analogy is like Tiger Woods was raised. You see him on TV hitting a golf ball at 3 and 4 years old. That's how I was raised. Started taking piano lessons at 4, 5 years old, and now in university, my minor was like concert piano, right? So it's like I still play classical piano.
Okay.
So from those days of having to practice the piano an hour a day, so I was raised. And what's funny, Andy, is looking back on it, I go, why did I like go along with that? But as a kid, you don't know any better. So your mom says you have to read a book a day. You read a book a day. And oh, by the way, my mom said to me, guess what? We don't want you to read fiction because it's a waste of your brain. You're gonna have to read biographies. And oh, guess what? At 12 years old, I'm reading my dad's Blackstone law books, right? It's like, it's crazy. But that's how I was raised.
But your friends weren't doing that. I mean,
my friends weren't. They were watching Seinfeld and doing all of this fun stuff, going to the pool. My parents were very religious. They said, you're not allowed to go to the pool or wear swim trunks or things like that. You have to be modest. And basically it was, we only want you to do things that are worthwhile. And really laughing and joking and all of that craziness. I mean, we had fun, don't get me wrong. But it was like, look, let's build mastery in your life that you can use to be successful down the road. And so that's what they were really focused on. So it's no wonder my first company, my first job, my first company at 12 and 13 years old was mowing lawns, some 200 of them, I think, and that money, my parents, when I got home, took that money and said, we're going to help you invest it and save it and store it and keep it. And I basically paid my own way through college using the money I, as a young teenager, built. And so I learned the lessons. I mean, there was no label on it. No one was calling me an entrepreneur at 12. In fact, I was like some sweaty dude with a lot of grass stains on my knees, right?
Right.
Now everyone's a fancy, entrepreneur. I'm an entrepreneur. Back then I was just like a dude who was hustling, trying to earn my keep. And so, but I learned lessons. I learned that, look, a home closer to my house, I could give them a little discount because I didn't have to walk as far. And I learned that, a home that was further away, I needed to charge them more. I remember when I first started mowing lawns, I mean, again, this is rude awakening, 12-year-old kid. I go and borrow $20 from my mom. I go down to the store where they have, you print flyers. And I printed flyers and I handed them out. Like, people called the house and I picked up the phone. Okay, I'm glad to come. I go outside and my mom opens the back door. She says, where are you going? I said, I'm going to mow this lawn. And she said, why are you pushing the family lawnmower down the street? And I said, I'm going to go mow the lawn. She said, that's not your lawnmower. You don't own it. You can, how can you use that lawnmower? And I said, well, I hadn't thought of this. I said, maybe can I use this lawnmower? She said, sure, happy to let you use the family lawnmower, but you're going to have to pay me a price. And I was like, worst mom in the world. No one put a label on that, but guess what I learned? I learned about vendor relationships, right?
Yep.
I learned about price. Anyways,
cost of goods.
Exactly. All the stuff that I would have never learned, I would have to, 10 years later in an MBA class, I would have a fancy title for it. I learned as a 12 and 13-year-old kid. And at 25, 26 years old, it's no wonder I had made millions of dollars in this tutelage, right? Being taught every day.
What was the first business you started professionally beyond college?
My first one was actually a business that I didn't start. I worked at Enron for a couple months, believe it or not, and then jumped to a plumbing, heating, and air conditioning company that was very, very, very small. And I didn't start it, but my best friend's dad did, and we were at a football game, and he said, "Hey, I hear you're good at sales. I'm going to think about firing my sales team. Would you think about coming in and doing something from scratch?" And I thought, sure, why not? It's a challenge. And in 2 years later, I'd built it into a $20 million empire. And by the way, back then I was cheeky and ballsy. So you know what I said to him? By the way, for all of you young sales guys out there looking at, I need to get paid more. You know what I told him? I said, don't pay me a salary. Give me 10% of every bit of revenue this company brings in that I contribute to. Now, if you just heard what I said a few minutes ago, I said I grew this to be a $20 million company in 2 years. So as a young punk, I think I joined the company when I was 19 years old, maybe 20. I was making a lot of money at a very early age, but I had the guts to go and believe in myself and say, don't pay me anything until I sell a lot for you, and then I want you to pay me. Now, the other lesson I learned was, guess what? I left after 2 years. You know why? The guy who was writing the checks.
You wanted to stop writing the checks.
That's right. Yeah, lesson number 2, Andy. And you've written about this. You've talked about it. But I was young. I made a rookie mistake. is that I priced myself out of a job. I had built a company for somebody else and made myself a lot of money. Don't get me wrong, but that was a short-term deal. And like a professional football player or professional sports person, negotiating that process can be pretty frictional. I said, screw it, I'm going to leave. Went to I found another very small company, about $100,000 a year company that was selling legal services. Can I use the same process I used in mowing lawns, building an empire there, to selling air conditioners and toilets? Can I do that selling legal services to lawyers on Wall Street and on K Street in Washington, D.C.? And in 1 year grew that from $150,000 to $8 million. It would have been $25 million, but unfortunately, we were physically unable, literally could not do the work, so we could not sell it. And literally, like every single person was working tremendous amounts of overtime. There's just no way to scale it that fast. But
what was your secret to transforming the sales so dramatically? Let's take the legal services company. I mean, what did you do differently than what they had been doing in the past?
I think it's, one of the big lessons I learned was perspective matters a lot. Perspective. And so a lot of people know about their industry. And so there's something magical about being a little clueless about what, and I'm air quoting here, what will work, right? What should work. Mm-hmm. So I went in with a take no prisoners approach. One of the things I did, which was, and I think I've talked about this in interviews before, is when I went in, it really was I gathered a motley crew of salespeople around me to go sell. And when you joined, I would literally get you a sword that was engraved with your name on it. Now, this is back in the time when Gladiator first came out.
Right,
I think that's the first movie that I've seen about like 20 times. I have the soundtrack to it. Like when I'm running sometimes it'll come on. Yeah. The soundtrack to where he's in the stadium fighting, and it's like, dun dun na 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 na, and you're like, wow, yes, your blood's pumping, you're thinking about swinging swords and tigers jumping off chains. But when I would hire people and I would say, listen, we are not salespeople, we are warriors, and we don't fight each other, we fight everybody outside. And I really changed the tone from process to aptitude, from aptitude to attitude, and I really brought in guys who wanted it. Mm-hmm. And something to prove, chip on their shoulder. And then I began to add a process to refine them. So I didn't refine them. I didn't look at coherence or adherence to a program first. I went into guys who were hungry and angry and frustrated and wanted to leave their mark on the world. And I said, join me, my brothers. And literally when you joined, their name was engraved on it. And it was a heavy sword like the sword from Gladiator. Looked exactly the same. I gave it to him, had a sheath and all, and it weighed probably 2 or 3 pounds. When they left, we said, you have to give us your sword back.
Did you break it? Did you break it like the ceremonial?
Oh, no. You know what we did? We hung them up on the wall. We had a wall that was hung up of what we called past heroes. And so literally, and what happened was it did 2 things. One, we became legendary in a short period of time. By the way, I went on to take this company. I was going to leave and build a competitor company, and the shareholder said, no. How about you run this company? I became CEO, and we grew it to 150 locations, and I eventually sold it to a company that everyone knows called Edmund Scientific, big publicly traded sort of deal, and it went big. So the end of the story was things went well and we grew and this actually worked. But part of why it worked was, one, I had the right timing. It was an industry that was growing, so I got some natural buoyancy. Mm-hmm. Another way to say that is I was lucky. The other thing that really made it work was we brought in guys who were willing to scrap, and the reputation got around that, wow, these guys were they were serious. And so our competitors knew that if we were coming after you, that it was going to be a fight. So when we moved into Philly, it was a fight. When we moved into New York, it was a fight. When we went to Miami, it was a fight. And every location, it's like we're not backing down an inch, and we're hiring warriors. And so that attitude, again, that idea of capturing the will, right? Mm-hmm. And stimulating that was something that I learned very early on. Is that if people don't want to win, I can't change them. But there are a lot of people who want to win who don't look pretty winning. They sweat too much. They stink too much while they're sweating. They grunt while they're doing push-ups, right?
Right.
And so the big businesses who want the guy who's wearing the bow ties and the white shoes go, oh, he doesn't fit our classification.
Right.
He doesn't have the right skills. He doesn't have the right pedigree, not the right resume, not the right CV. And they kick him to the curb. And I grab that guy and give him a hand up and say, listen, are you ready to battle? If you're ready to battle, I've got a place for you, And so I learned that very early on. Now, the problem was I couldn't exactly describe what I was doing. Looking back on it, I've got labels for it. Looking back, I've got, processes for it. But while I was living that, I was horribly frustrated because it was a lot of touch and feel, and I knew someone wouldn't work out, but I didn't know why. So take, for example, before we sold Edmund Scientific, I was planning to do two things: either take the company big, or really big, or sell. And so I was hiring a CFO because I thought if we go public or something, I need a CFO who like not a bookkeeper type, like a real CFO. And so I interviewed a gentleman who's still a very close friend of mine. We became friendly in this process, who was the first CFO of AOL. So this guy knew his stuff, really knew his stuff. And I brought him in. I thought, what the hell am I doing? Right? I'm a college dropout twice, right? Dropped out of two different universities, 5 years, no degree. Like, on one hand, I'm thinking like, Dan, you're just like an epic loser. How are you going to interview a CFO to take your company public? And so I sat across the chair from this guy, and I said, he was telling me all this stuff, and I said, look, thank you. What's your first biggest weakness? What's your biggest weakness? And he said, it gave me this long answer, like 2 minutes. And it was like, I care too much, love too much, give too much, always work too hard, all that stuff. And I said, what's your second biggest weakness? And I don't even remember what he said. And I said, what's your third biggest weakness?
The first answer I gave.
There you go. That's what you should have said. I think right around the fourth or fifth time I asked him what his biggest weakness was, he said, I don't know. Sometimes and I said, okay. I can live with that. And I learned this lesson early on is that there's something inside all of us that either propels us magically forward towards our goals or limits us. Sometimes people say that's self-limiting behavior. It limits us, stops us. So despite all of these skills we have and the experience, the tutelage and the capabilities, that we do things that cause ourselves to either be wildly effective, beyond what we should be, right? Beyond what other people think we should be, or it handcuffs us so that we don't even rise to the minimum expectations of our pedigree. And so that's what I realized, and of course now in working with big companies all over the world, I see this time and time and time again, that most of what stops us from being amazing, I'll use the word awesome a lot, has nothing to do with raw knowledge. All like, I didn't know that it was illegal to stab somebody in the chest, right? It's not about like, you know what I mean? It's kind of silly. It's
right.
Not that we don't know, it's that we don't do it. It's that we don't change. It's that we're not motivated to want to change. And so it's being able to help those organizations not just create strategy for the sake of making more money, but creating purpose and meaning so that long after it stops being fun or funny, that you're still winning. You're still winning.
Right.
And that's that, my friend. That's the Holy Grail.
All right. Well, we want to get back. When we come back after a short break, I want to talk further about that. Stay with us after the break as Dan Waldschmidt shares with us his secrets for developing the attitude you need to succeed at everything, I guess, right?
Yeah, everything. Yeah,
at everything. Right. Life, business, you name it. So stay with us. We'll be right back. Hi, this is Andy. Connect and Sell is used by sales reps at nearly 1,000 companies, including hundreds of technology startups and several Fortune 500 companies, to overcome the challenges of getting prospects on the phone. Companies using Connect and Sell grow their revenues faster by enabling their sales reps to have more sales conversations in 90 minutes than they could otherwise achieve in an entire week. Connect and Sell can be deployed directly to your sales reps, or you can take advantage of their outbound on-demand service, which delivers qualified prospect meetings scheduled directly on your sales reps' calendars. Visit connectandsell.com to learn more about how Connect and Sell can start filling your pipeline today. Welcome back. My guest today is Dan Waldschmidt. Make sure you follow Dan online at danwaldschmidt.com. Make sure you read his blog every day. Great stuff day in, day out about developing the attitudes you need to win and succeed at work and at life. And so right before the break, you were talking about, attitude versus aptitude and developing these, consistent winning habits, if you will. For a CEO of a small business or a salesperson of a small business or a medium-sized business, what's the first step they need to take? How do they do that self-assessment of what these self-limiting beliefs are, as you talked about? How do they self-assess, and then, what's the first step to making a change?
Yeah, so part of it is really knowing what you want, and perhaps some people call that knowing your why. But why are you doing this? What makes you tick? Is attaching it to something bigger than just making money. It has to be attached to something bigger than making money. Maybe look, and sometimes we're not honest about this. I talked to a friend of mine. He's running 700 miles. And I said, why are you doing this? He said, I don't know, because I can. I said, no, stop. Don't give me that bullshit. Why are you doing this? Is it to prove to yourself that you're tough enough to do it? And he's like, yeah, probably. And so I said, I get it. I have those same drives. I've run almost 8,000 miles in the last 2 years, right? I get it. But what is it? And not being afraid to put it out there. I want to change the world. I want to create a financial launch pad for my family. I want to better my community. Whatever it is, whatever your thing is, attaching it. Now, here's what I'll tell companies who often say to me, "Oh, we're just not inspired to change." Then I'll say this: then your dreams aren't big enough. I don't have to motivate you to get out of bed when your house is on fire, right? I mean, you're pretty damn motivated to get out of your bed on your own. Right. No one has to run around with an air horn, aroo, aroo, right? No one has to come around and say, will you get out of bed? You're out of bed. In fact, you're not just walking down the hallway, you're running down the hallway, right?
Right.
No one has to say you need to work up a sweat. You're doing it. Why? Because your house is on fire. So you got to find a way to set your house on fire, right? And by the way, sometimes that's literally. Sometimes there's small business owners who have the wrong thinking. They're playing it so safe they'll never grow. And I talked to someone today who said to me, well, if we improve our service, we might drop our revenue by 40%. And I said, you might, but you also might attract customers that you don't even know where they are or that they exist, right? They're out there. They want you. But you're so focused on I don't want to lose what I have right now. I often think whenever I find these sort of business questions very confusing in my mind, I try to go very primitive, right? And so I love the story, of course, of Hernando Cortez.
Right, burning the ships.
That's exactly right. And I'm getting a new tattoo in the next 2 weeks. I've already got it drawn up and everything on my arm to add to the ones I already have. Of the ship burning and saying burn the ships.
Right. But for listeners that don't know, Cortez was the Spanish explorer that landed Central America somewhere, Mexico maybe. Yeah. And basically when his troops offloaded the ship, he didn't want fear to conquer them, so he burnt the ships they came over on. So there was no return. That's right. The only way to get home was to conquer. Right. That's it. So, literally, so that's the lesson. You have nailed it. The only way to move forward is to find a new path, Now that takes guts. And I'll tell you, it's hard to do it. The couple times I've done it, I got to tell you, it's scary, but you find a way. So attaching what you really want to change in your life. By the way, another silly example. My father was a very high-level government official under George Bush and running the NSA. And at 45, he went to the doctor. Doctor said, oh, you're having pain because you just had a heart attack. That was a small one, but you need to change your stress level and diet and a few things like that. Well, obviously, if you're in the government during the Bush years, that was, 9/11 and all that stuff. So stress level was high. But he said, here's one thing you can do is change how you eat.
So he went home the next day, threw out the butter, threw out the salt, threw out all the crap, started eating healthy. Now, prior to that day, my mom, who raised me, nagged him about not eating donuts and he needed to eat more lettuce. I'll tell you, my dad lost 25 pounds and he didn't hear a nagging word from my mom, right? What changed? Well, my mom still had the same beliefs, right? My dad still had the same wants for donuts, but what changed was he wanted to live more than he wanted donuts.
Right.
And until you want to live more than you want donuts in your business, what's sweet and sexy in your belly, right? When you want to grow and change so badly that your bones ache if you don't have it, right? Until you get to that point, then guess what? You probably won't make the change in your life that will be a catalyst for transformation. And you'll talk about it, and you'll still read Inc. magazine and Fast Company. You have all the blogs, Harvard Business Review. You'll know the right terms, be tweeting the right tweets, right? Sharing the right content, but you'll never be the somebody you want to be, the somebody you dream about, because you're not willing to just burn the ships and change. Just burn it all down, burn it, right? Dance around the flames and say, today's a new day. Instead, you make excuses. Well, I got to do this. Or I got to do that. You don't have to do anything. What you have to do is pursue your dream at all costs. We realize this intensity from time to time. We get a chance to observe it in others. With the blogs that I write and the articles that I find is I try to find these people and bring them to life. We found a guy 2 days ago in China. He was kicked out of school because he's handicapped, had no arms, and he became kind of a big story in China because he took the standardized testing in China with his toes.
Yeah, love it.
And he didn't do well enough, so he retook the test to get a higher score. And so again, it's like, and of course that level of commitment is of course revered. It used to be revered in our country more than it is now, it feels like. But when you see that, you have to stand back and cheer. And of course, those stories are all around us. They don't often make the news, but those are things that I try to illuminate to say, look, if you want that same breakthrough in your life, then listen, you probably have to act differently, and not just act a little bit differently, act a lot of it differently. So I think the first thing that busy business leaders of any size business, whether you think you're a small business, medium-sized business, or a big multi-billion-dollar company, right? Like GE, Aetna, Siemens, or the NFL, one of these big companies, right? Big enterprises, is from time to time, you have to make time every Monday, every Tuesday, something like every Saturday morning over a cup of coffee. Sit down and say, what do I really want? Do I really want to be doing what I'm doing now? And if the answer is yes, then that's great. You're in a good spot. If the answer is no, the next question needs to be, what do I need to do, right, to get there? What change? Maybe it's a small change, Maybe it's like your life is good, but the person right underneath you is passive aggressive. And maybe you need to pull that guy aside and say, listen, I really love this company and I like working with you. But if you can't be more direct, you can't work here anymore. And I know we've worked together for 35 years because you're an incredibly talented person. But if this doesn't change, right, then you're going to have to leave, So these are things that we often avoid. And inside we're smeltering, right?
Right.
We're just steaming, and it builds up and builds up. And instead of becoming better versions of ourselves, we're just worn out and bitter and angry and end up like giving up. But
I think you hit such a key point is that for so many people, and I see this with companies I've worked with clients over the years, especially small, medium enterprises, a lot of times they engage me because they're stuck. Right?
Yeah.
This is what happens. They reach a certain level of proficiency at what they do, and they sort of get satisfied, but the instinct is now to protect what they have, just the point you talked about. And what are they really protecting, right? I mean, they're really protecting themselves against success.
Yep.
Because
that's exactly right.
If you stand still, you're guaranteed to start failing.
That's right. And that's a mindset issue. I think my good buddy Tom Searcy said to me the other day, it's in a lot of business, there's mechanics. So the mechanics might be HR, it might be sales, it might be cold calling, marketing, outbound emailing, inbound emailing, lead generation, whatever it is. Okay, there's lots of mechanics. And so guys like me and you write books about the mechanics. We write books on how to improve your cold calling and zero-time selling. It was a masterful book you wrote about a year ago, I think, right?
Yeah.
A year and a half?
Three years ago now.
Wow, oh my gosh. I still have that on my desk.
Oh, thanks.
So we write books about these mechanics and well-intentioned books. We write these books going, how do we help small business leaders, fix their mechanics? Because if they fixed it, if they adopted the principles that you outlined in zero-time selling, guess what? They would have more time in their life and they'd have more sales. So it's frustrating. I'm putting words in your mouth, I'm sure. When people read your book and don't implement it, and you want to shake them by the neck and go, dude, I spent a year writing this book, and if you would just follow it, you would have a better business. So it's like, why don't they do it? Why don't they listen to these mechanics who can fix it? And so here's the scenario. If you're a business leader, this is important, is that there's mechanics, but ahead of mechanics, there's mindset. So you've got mindset and mechanics. And so what happens is if your mindset is, I already know what there is to know, right? I've been doing this business and my grandpappy did this business and my grandpappy's grandpappy did this business and I know what to do and I know it all. That's your attitude. Then you're right. You get stuck. And you might not even know that's your attitude. Someone might have to point it out to you. Then the mechanic, the changes that can help make you better just get left to the side. And if those mechanics don't get tweaked, then the last section, the magic, is missing. So companies like Amazon can send a package to us in like anywhere in the world in like 24 hours or something. It's incredible.
Right.
And Zappos can like send you like endless numbers of awesome shoes, right? It's like these companies have certain things that they're known for, and it's magical. Disney World, literally magic, right? And so, but that comes from it comes from great mechanics, but the mechanics comes from a belief system of mindset, and by the way, that's what I talked earlier a few minutes ago about is, what are you thinking about? What's your why? If your mindset is, I can always improve, then when someone criticizes you, go, okay, and you take the good stuff and throw away the bad stuff. If your mindset is, our customers are stupid, and guess what? Everyone's picking on me, and I never get a break. Then guess what? When someone criticizes you, you're like, see, that's what I'm talking about. Everyone's picking on me, and life isn't fair. And so what happens is your mechanics become defensive, right? And guess what happens to your magic? If that's like a candle, a flame, it just starts getting smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller, and eventually it goes out. And so I think it's important to realize as a company is that, guys like you and me who try to help these leaders get unstuck, they come in and they say to us, Andy, I know you're an expert in sales, so come on, give it to me, baby. Show me how to improve my mechanics, and you will. If they listen to you, they will improve. But part of that change in mechanics really needs to include as well, simultaneously, a change in their mindset. And what are they doing, not just to hire you to fix their mechanics, what are they doing each day to fix their mindset? And, and in sports, we see it, right? In sports, Lindsey Vonn, for example, who's won the most downhill skiing events of any.
Most alpine ski events, I think, of any woman. Yeah.
Yeah, I think of anyone. Yeah, it's crazy. She goes to ski with 3 coaches. One of them is a ski coach, and 2 of them are head coaches, right? Helping her focus.
Yep.
Right? High speeds around corners, all that stuff. Focus, intensity, mindset, all of that. It's why is Phil Jackson, right? The Zen master, right? How can he help great basketball players like Michael Jordan? How do these legends like Michael Jordan look up to Phil Jackson? Because, right, he's able to reach inside their soul and help stimulate what really matters. And so, one of the reasons why I go running almost every day is to keep my head in shape. One of the reasons why I try to meditate every day, keep my head in shape. One of the reasons why I wake up every morning and try to tell myself a few important things. I refuse to worry about things that are outside my control. Why do I have to repeat that to myself? Because there are things outside my control that frustrate me. And if I don't remind myself, hey, idiot, guess what? That's out of your control. Don't worry about it. Don't waste your emotion on it. My mindset goes to crap. And if my mindset gets lousy, guess what gets lousy too? my mechanics.
Yep.
If my mechanics get lousy, guess what? I don't sell.
Results get lousy, right.
That's right. Even if I have a great book on my desk called Zero Time Selling, guess what? It ain't working for me. Because my mindset's horrible.
Right. Or amp up your sales. That would work
Amp up your sales. That's, yeah.
All right, we're gonna
you know what's funny? I have 2 copies of Amp Up Your Sales on my desk.
Make sure you give one to a friend.
There you go.
So I'm going to take a short break here. We're going to come back and talk further with Dan Waldschmidt. Make sure you follow Dan at danwaldschmidt.com. Hi, this is Andy. You've just listened to part 1 of my conversation with Dan Waldschmidt. Part 2 is even more incredible. It's going to air on December 8th. You want to make sure you don't miss it. Now, the way to do that is to go to iTunes, subscribe to this podcast, and you not only catch the next episode with Dan, but also all the conversations we've recorded with amazing leaders in sales and marketing, business development, professional development, people to help you grow and amp up your business. So until next time, this is Andy Paul. Good selling, everyone.